Welcome back. I've decided to do another video. We've been recently playing a lot with Rails. I've been playing a lot with breaking Rails and trying to figure out how to do things that it doesn't want to do. Just for some context, currently at Coder Academy we're making little side projects. Mine is a little climbing notebook, so I'm a rock climber. That's what I do with my spare time. And one nerdy thing that we like to do as rock climbers is like record all of our climbs and how we did them and the grade and the difficulty and like the style or whatever. Like, it's super boring, but for climbers it's really fun. So I built an app I built a very like small functioning app on how that works, but that does that kind of thing. It lets you log your ascents. Thus the app is called Ascend. So it's all here. I've already got it running, so it's got to log in, and that's, I think, like the point of this video is that I wanted to show you the way I've hacked the forms together. So I'll show you what I mean. So once you've got your login in, it lets you in, and that's like what I've already put into the database here. Cool. So there are websites that do this. Web apps already out there that let you create an account, and then you can look up areas and you can like log your ascents. And one thing that I've always found in those websites is sometimes it's really tricky to add more than one sort of like tick or ascent at a time, like to put them all in. And I always thought that was really interesting. I'm like, why is this so difficult? And now, having used the Rails framework a little bit, I kind of am starting to understand why. Turns out that at least within the Rails framework, that creating one form and making it submit multiple objects is like not super how it wants to work. Anyway, so I've rigged it up in a way so now here you can basically request from 1 to 10 different forms. So if I say I want to add one client, I press add, and then it will give me one form. Otherwise, if I go back and put in 5, it will then give me 5 forms to fill out. This works a little differently than the regular Rails forms helpers, which is what I have been using, and what I was trying to get to use. Anyone who's familiar with the Rails forms helpers will know that if you are trying to save like data to a single object, using the form helpers is so easy. Like, once you understand a little bit, it's just so easy. Like, it takes so much typing out of it. You can just call at the instance variable that you want, and it kind of does half the work for you. But in this case, when you're trying to add three sets of data with a single submit button, which you can see down here, and then have that all ripped apart, it's actually pretty tricky. It doesn't really want to do that for you. So why don't we jump in the code and I can show you a little bit of what I've done. So yeah, let's just go to the new thing. Let's go to the new view. So we're going to go to the view for this page. Layout, no, not layouts. Yeah. Okay. Right. So this took me ages to figure out. Basically, let's just go. Yeah, so you can see here I've only written one form, and that form is being created more than once. So usually when you would write a Ruby form, a Rails form, sorry, you could say like form for at object, whatever your like object that you're using, and then do F. And like that in itself will do so much of the work for you. You can really just write your form from there, and as long as you're using resourceful roots, resourceful roots, if you don't know what those are, look them up, they're amazing. Resourceful roots, new roots, and then you can just say like F field, text field, and then whatever, like, oh, it's, I didn't even realize I have that, so let's change that so it's actually gonna work. Great. And then whatever this is, so like data symbol. Keep going and then create your submit button. And like with this, it'll like already wrap everything up. So it'll wrap everything up in the object itself. So when you send that parameter through to your create, it'll like be in your parameters, and it will say like, you know, for this case, it will say object, and then that will be a hash full of all your data symbols, like the data you've collected under this. So, you know, this will have the key data symbol, and then it will be whatever you enter, whatever string you enter. Anyway, that's a tangent. This doesn't work for what I'm doing at all. You know, initially I was like experimenting with like, oh, maybe I need to like create an array that has objects, and then I need to assign forms to each of those objects, and like, oh my god, it was just such a nightmare. And what I ended up actually doing was saying, all right, stuff the objects. Like, I don't want to assign the form to an object at all, because when you do that in Rails, Rails expects you to build a form that is only going to be submitted to one object. You know, like it's saying you're building a form and it's just for one object, one thing, which makes sense. Like that's how you usually use a form. Like you're like filling out a user thing, or like details, or like contact thing. Like, you know, you don't need multiple. So I thought, okay, well, let's go more general. And luckily, Rails also provides these helpers, form with, and then also these tag helpers. So for the form with, you can just create a general form that you can submit data to the parameters. It's not related to any objects. It's not tied to anything. It still goes as post in general. So it just needs a couple more parameters. Form with, you give it the URL. So for me, it's tick's path, and that will post to my tick path. Local true. That's an Ajax thing that I do not understand. If someone knows, can explain that to me in an easy to understand way, please send me a direct message or something. Do F. I don't even know. Oh yeah, I do need this. Because that's for the submit button. Cool. And then I set a parameter. Well, I set a variable, n equals 1. And then number of times do this. So I'm like looping through and creating this many times. And this number here, this number instance variable, as you may have guessed already, is coming from that index page. So this is setting that at number. So if I say 5, at number is 5. If I say 1, at number is 1. And that just allows me to pass a variable into that new method, new action, I should say. Anyway, that's how it sort of works, at least to get the form to render. Then I did a little bit of weird like interpolation magic to actually get the things to wrap properly. So why don't I show you how they actually wrap? Let's go into the controller and play with it a little bit. So if I go into my ticked controller, great. Sweet. This is going to look really, yeah, this is like, it took me like many hours to just figure out how to like pull this apart, what I'm about to show you. So why don't I just okay, make it super simple. Pretty print params. So when I make a request, it should print the params to my console here, which will be nice. And then I can show you exactly what's happening. Yeah, let's just start with that. So I'll show you what happens when actually we submit a form. So let's change a couple things. We'll change the dates. We'll put some names in there. Put a random grade. Put a crag. Meowtown. Name of the climb. Peanuts. Beta. Left hand is bad. Cool. None of this will be submitted. I've got enough validators there that it won't actually go through to my database, and that's fine. So I'll hit add, and none of that goes through. And it actually tells me here tick 3 did not save successfully. I hadn't worked that one out. Before I had it where it would tell me each one, and now I've tried to change something and it's not quite working, but that's okay. We'll get back to it. It's not important. Didn't save, whatever, we don't care. What we do care about is where are you? There it is. All right. This is what we're looking at. Okay, so this is a lot of writing to look at, and I am sorry. I apologize. you can see here that we've got, it's a hash, obviously it's the parameters hash, so you've got your authenticity token, dope, and then you've got 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. So each form has been put into a number that is going up by 1 each time. So number 1 has date, name, climb type, grade, has all the things I want in it. Number 2 has the same. So you can see how this is becoming like a thing where, okay, now I can actually pull this apart in my controller and do the thing. So definitely more steps, more lines of code than say like, you know, the easier option would be like make one form for one object, you make this thing, you submit it, and then you say, ask the user, do you like want to make another one, or do you want to go back to home? Which is fine, but I think that like, you know, climbers are impatient people. Like when we go climbing, we might climb 6 things, we might climb 10 things, and you don't want to sit there and like load like 10 new things, especially when, you know, for us anyway, like for climbers, you could do the same route 3 times because you're trying it. You want to climb it from top to bottom, not from top to bottom, from bottom to top without falling off. So you might try it 3 times and maybe you get it and maybe you don't. And maybe the next time you go out, you do it 3 more times. So it's like, you don't want to load a new form and say like, I'm just putting the same information in and changing like one thing. If you have all that on one page, yes, there's some copy pasting that happens, but it's like less mouse clicks. Just nice to experience everybody involved. So anyway, that was a bit of a rant. That's the way it comes through to the actual controller. And the way I've done this, which is where this whole thing began, is that's the magic here. This little variable. So I've set that variable number times do. Each field, so text field, date field, select, has a, like, this is what the value is getting assigned as, or is that the value? One or the other. Anyway, that's like the hash value, that's the hash key. And I've interpolated the number here and then date. And this is again Rails magic because you can just put this in as a string and it reads it the way you want it to. So I've done that for all the things, and that just means it's like nice and nested for me, so I can actually pull it apart in the controller. So it goes through, this is 1, 1, 1, 1, does that, gets to the bottom, n plus equals 1, and then now this is 2, creates another one, except this is 2, 2, 2, 2. Amazing, and now it's really a lot easier to work with. So much easier to work with than the controller. Maybe let's go into the controller. I'll show you a little bit of how I've like pulled it apart, because one thing I realized, well, let's just like wrap that up. So yeah, that's how it works. You know, you're telling it how many times you want to generate, you're setting on a general form. This is not tied to an object at all, general form. And then you're like incrementing this number by 1 every single time, and you're using that to nest it. This is like a key part, and it's really hard to find info, not super hard, not amazingly hard, but it's kind of like, this is a weird way to do it. And it was hard to like kind of go through the docs and like find the pieces that I want. Of course, everything on Stack Overflow is for like super crazy corner cases that have nothing to do with what I'm doing. Anyway, okay, so let's look at the controller. So it submits all those parameters that I showed you, these ones here. So 1, 2, and 3 with all the things in it. Great, cool. So that's submitted to the controller, to the create action. We'll take this out so it's easier, not easy to read. Cool. So some of you might be thinking, okay, that's cool, you've done that, but maybe like the way you're doing this isn't super secure, at least from a param side. Like, what stops someone from like bombing a whole bunch of params in there that you don't want, and then suddenly you're like, because it's quite hard to create strong params when you can't just say require object permit all the things that you want in. That kind of breaks down. Like that require permit thing isn't super built for what I'm doing, especially when like the amount of things that can be submitted is dynamic. So what I did was create my own way of doing what I think is strong params. So created a private method called comparative params and assigned that, or that returns a value that I assigned to this instance variable. And comparative params is basically just, it's an array of string elements that is this is all the things that I want to let through. Like all the names of the symbols that I want to let through. And I think they get submitted in strings. So that's why they're strings. The keys are strings. So I'm assigning that to here, and I'll show you what I did to that a little bit later. So first I create the data hash from param select. Why didn't I just use params? If you just say params each key do key, you'll get every key, including the authenticity token, which doesn't work for this method below, or like this kind of if-else statement that I've created. So that breaks it. But if you say data hash, because of the way I've structured my params, I've said data hash equals params select x to integer more than 0. So the number of, like within that data hash, like within that hash parameters hash that's getting submitted here, each set of data, like each hash within the hash should never be less than 0. It should always be a number. It can go up to 10. Yeah. So that selects those. And then now I know in this data hash, I've only got the parameters, each key do key. I create a new tick. A tick is like what I'm calling it in my database. So I can start like giving it things to start saving to the database. So then I'm going to go through each key. Yeah, so for each key, so like 1, 2, 3 each, you're going to take the key and the value, and then I'm using the comparative. So this is that thing down here again. So I'm comparing, if the comparative includes the key, which it should. If it doesn't, that means someone's put something extra in that I do not want. I want you to add to this tick key to symbol equals the value. So in that way, I'm starting to add stuff onto the actual tick object here, and I'm only doing that for one thing, else next. And that's, I don't even know if I need that, to be honest. And then here I've got the user ID as well. So current user, that's a predefined method. I won't go too much into this. That's like another whole, all the ticks that are associated to a user. I think that's like a separate video. And then, yeah, if the tick saves, flash the notice. If not, bad. And then end, like plus equals 1. Where am I using the end again? I forgot. Maybe that's left over from something I don't actually need. Oh no, sorry, yeah, that's right here. The N is like, so you can tell the user which tick didn't save. So if you've got 5 forms, you can say number 3 didn't save correctly, number 5 didn't save correctly, but number 1, 2, and 4 did. So they know what they might need to look at again. And then it will go back and do the whole thing until it's got no more data to work with, and then it'll redirect to the root path. So like that's a lot of stuff I just said to you, and it probably doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. But I think it's like a cool way of kind of like hacking Ruby a little bit to get it to do what you want, even if it's not like in the way that Ruby wants you to do, Rails wants you to do it. And just so I show you that it actually works, I guess. Let's go to, so I'm going to give these 2 dates. One's on the 1st of this month, this one's on in the future. I haven't managed to filter that. And that's going to be bad. Just doing a whole bunch of data entry. And these ones I don't need. And then feeling spicy. Yeah, repeat of 30 on trad, no worries. Okay. Cool, and that adds it in. So yeah, I can add more than one thing in without having to say like add another climb. I think basically you do save time there. And I would be interested to hear what you people think out there, like if this is like much more dangerous in terms of security risk. I'm sure by not using this like require thing, by like creating my own require sort of method here, I'm maybe like putting way too many turning cogs into it, but yeah, that's sort of how it works. Maybe if that's something that you want to do, that will give you an idea of how to do it. I think like my problem with it was that I was trying to go way too complicated. I was trying to like assign objects. I was trying to like use it so I could, and that's a fluency thing. I think I just didn't really understand the forms exactly how I needed to in order to do it. Anyway, that's all I got. This has already been 20 minutes, so I think I've wasted enough of your time. Hopefully you got something out of that. I certainly enjoyed making this.